My entitled cousin threatened me with a voodoo doll, then demanded I be her maid of honor at her wedding to the man she stole from me. I have a cousin about 1 year younger than me. We used to be really close, and people thought we were sisters, but that changed in high school. She became a completely different person than what she was. It got to the point that she wanted to see me in pain after she started dating my ex-boyfriend, who had cheated on me with her. She intentionally treated my hair with a strong hair relaxer, and I had to cut it because it wouldn't stop falling out. After that, she would steal friends and boyfriends just to spite me. But I didn't let this affect me. From 2018 until late 2019, I dated my ex. She hooked up with him and they got together. She thought they would affect me by doing this, but she was livid that I didn't care. She started hounding me by sending pictures of them together and leaving a black voodoo doll on my balcony. I eventually got a restraining order due to her constant pestering, but it was only for 6 months and expired in 2020. Now to the present. She recently got engaged and she announced it on Facebook. I don't have one, but friends and family told me all about it. I didn't care. The wedding was going to be a Christmas wedding. Recently at a family dinner, she asked me to be her maid of honor because it was thanks to you that we met. Everybody stopped talking and paid attention to what I was going to say. I flatly said no. She then asked why, and all I did was give her a look that said, "You know why." She then started saying that it would be a good opportunity to bond again. I told her I wasn't going to do it, and to ask for someone else, since I would be away on a trip the day she was having her wedding. She started crying, more like manipulating, that if I wouldn't do this, I would be uninvited to the wedding. I told her fine by me. I didn't wait for her answer. I left her with a surprised Pikachu face. When I got home, I got angry texts from my family saying that I should be the bigger person and do this for her. Toxic much? Well, that's what happens when you're raised in a Latino household. I explained this to some friends and to my boyfriend. They told me I did the right thing by turning this down. Besides, I gave her my reasons. I don't care about becoming the villain in the family. For a woman who likes to manipulate, the original poster's cousin isn't very good at it. This woman had brass ones to threaten uninviting the OP from a wedding that she already said she wasn't attending. I'm not touching the comment about being raised in a Latino household because I'm white as the driven snow. That said, I've known quite a few people of Latin descent, and I've been threatened with relatively few voodoo dolls. So either I'm extremely lucky, or this OP's cousin is a real piece of work. If the OP's ex really thinks it's a good idea to be with a woman like this, let him have her. They probably deserve each other. Narcissistic Kevin demands a free burger because we didn't ram it down his throat fast enough. So I was working one of my last shifts at a restaurant when this man in his late 40s comes in. He orders a burger and a drink, but shouts at me, telling me to make it fresh. I told him, "Sir, we always make our food fresh." He then called me a liar because his burger was cold last time. So I told the kitchen whilst he stood there to make sure it was as fresh as possible. 10 minutes later, he was gone with his food. 15 minutes later, he comes back with his food, complaining it was cold by the time he got around the corner, and accusing me of giving him a gone-off drink despite my being stuck on till this whole time. I called over my manager after he started threatening me and trying to get behind the counter. Now my manager was speaking to him calmly when he showed her his receipt and went, "See this? This is a legally binding contract, and I expect you to fulfill it. Give me a full refund and all of your information, as well as a new receipt because this one is smudged." My manager then explained that as he decided not to eat the food until half an hour after it was served, that it would be cold by that point, and there was nothing she could do. He was not having it. He started to ask for her full name and stand number. She called security when he began making threats. He got barred and instead bothered security with his legally binding contract until he realized no one was listening and left. I've seen a lot of stories about Karens and Kevins demanding free food, but this is the first time even the receipt wasn't good enough for him. But the really great part is that he apparently had this exact same thing happen last time and learned absolutely nothing from it. If I had to guess, I'd say that whoever served him last time probably made the mistake of giving him the refund. Never feed a Kevin's ego. It'll only make him hungrier. A vicious Karen endangers child campers. So I run her entire business into the ground. Last year, I took a summer job for a kids camp. It seemed to be quite well paid, and I wanted to try working with kids. The hiring process was a little odd. As for the interview, I was called unexpectedly, and that woman, who was later my boss, spoke on the phone for about 2.5 hours plus and asked some really weird personal questions. For example, she asked, "You aren't a COVID-idiot, are you? Remember that. It will be a factor in the story." Anyway, I needed the money and it was the only callback I'd gotten so far, so I took it. She then made us all come in twice before starting the job so that she could explain it to us. Both times, it went on the whole effing day without being included in our payment because it was not mandatory. I got to be the boss of my team. Then the first day came around and we faced 20 or more children with their parents. But the boxes with the name lists, the toys and everything weren't there. We basically improvised and wrote their names as they came, hoping they were indeed signed up. The boxes later arrived, but the contents were measly at best. She had given us 2 kinds of games, Uno and something else. We got little instruments for the kids to decorate, but when she came around to check on us a few days later, she screamed at us, "The effing kids shouldn't have been allowed to take the instruments home," which she'd never said before and made no sense. The next few days went on like this. She came around and screamed at us for doing something that made no sense to every one of us, and pretending she had instructed us otherwise at the unpaid, non-mandatory orientation meeting, which I attended every time. She just talked about her personal life, no instructions. She went on and offended every single person in existence. She doesn't want to have lactose intolerant or handicapped kids in the camp because they're too much of a hassle. My Muslim colleague got scolded for wanting to go home to her toddler after a 10-hour shift, and she asked her in front of everyone if her son still sucked on her tiggle bitties, because otherwise she doesn't have any reason to go home. Parents with questions or complaints are to be educated like kids, because they behave like that when they didn't get effed by their wife the night before. Also, she made us work more than 12 hours without a break, and insulted me when I stood up and went home at the exact point I'd clocked 12 hours, because we have a law that requires that here. But 2 events stood out when she went after the kids. On the first occasion, you have to remember that this woman has an unhealthy obsession with corona. She not only changed the rules of everything anytime it fit her narrative with us, she also did that with the parents, which led to misunderstandings every single day. So she asked the children aged 4 to 10 which one had done an antigen test and who had a PCR test. Of course, the children didn't all know what that is, and a little 5-year-old girl raised her hand for the wrong one. When my boss noticed that, she gave this poor girl the scolding of her life and told her that she is dumb as a rock for not knowing the difference. Pretty sure this girl had spit in her face. I was so in shock, I probably should have slapped her for that, but I didn't. The girl tried hard not to cry and didn't come back the days after. The second incident was even more disturbing. A 4-year-old boy hit his head at the playground when they were all outside. I was back in the office when my colleagues came running. I called the boss while my colleague called the ambulance. When I told her that and how my colleague was already on the phone with the ambulance, she scolded me. But not because that boy got hurt. No, because we called the ambulance. In her world, it wasn't that bad and the father shouldn't find out. As if he was blind and wouldn't see the open wound anyway. The ambulance came, told us it was completely fine, even mandatory to call them in this case, and the boy suffered no further injury. He is fine now, thankfully. But I was furious. I was completely freaking out of anger. I had only worked there for 9 days, and the kids, as well as staff, had suffered enough. Instead of going after my impulse to call her back and tell her off, I calmed myself, and the next day, I didn't go to work, but to the doctor. I explained to her that my boss mistreats me and I can't terminate my contract early. So to keep me from snapping, she put me on sick leave without an end date. My boss was not amused when I sent her that doctor's notice, but I ignored her calls. I then proceeded to talk with my teammates and encourage them to get sick leave. I told them exactly what they can do and say to get that. The camp even tried to get rid of my Muslim coworker illegally. I explained to her that the paperwork from them is not legal, and she should ignore it, and also go on sick leave. So in about a 2-week frame, my location had to replace all 6 people, including me. And again, I was the team lead there. I took all records home too, so she couldn't just pass them on. I also changed the password to my email account and did just everything I could to irritate her. The story doesn't end there. As I found out, word spread like wildfire. Because she was such a piece of garbage to everyone at every location, 1 month after the start of camp, she lost more than half of her staff. Some of them still had to be paid sick leave. Apparently, she called some of them and begged them to come back, and offered bonuses as high as double the pay, and still got nobody to come back to help. The silver lining was that the parents also had enough of her, and many kids were taken out of that camp. So end of July arrived. I was on sick leave, and she calls me. She proceeds to tell me, with a suspicious calm, that if I don't want to come back next month, I should tell her now. She offered to end my contract without further obligation, and with my payment for the whole month of July. I tell her about how I'm coming back, because I really want to get better, and other BS. And of course, I just didn't come back. I proceeded to collect 1 additional full month of sick leave without ever speaking to her directly again. I also went out of my way to continue offering information for every single staff member at all locations who wanted to leave, so they could still get paid. Some also wanted to know where they could report her. So in the end, this is what she got for being a disrespectful witch. She lost half or more of her workers. Everyone hates her and wants nothing to do with her. She had to pay me the full 2 months for my vacation time since I didn't take it because I was so sick. She had to pay my overtime and the mandatory bonus you get for doing extra hours on account of all the 12+ hour shifts. All this multiplied by 6 at least. I got around 6,000 euros for 9 days of work. Her entire enterprise went downhill. And of course, I also had to get my money through legal support, so that fee fell on her too. I can't explain how much detail I put in the legal planning so as to get everyone paid out as much as possible without any chance of legal repercussions ever. My back is safer than safe. She will not ever be able to retaliate over what I did there. I studied law for a while and got everything double-checked by professionals. She tried to pester me, so I blocked her, but I heard she read my personal information to the other colleagues who stayed there and called me all possible names. So if she should ever even try to sue or blackmail me, I have evidence and witnesses that she tried to dox me, insulted me, and various other offenses. Honestly, after writing all this down, I'm kind of proud, but also surprised at how nicely that all worked out. I didn't see any listings for that job this year, so hopefully her camp went downhill. I hope she went back to whatever dark underworld she came from, or at least that she's unemployed. Okay, calm down just a little, OP. Calling you names after you've stopped working there isn't a legal offense. That makes it sound like your law studies were restricted to Google and sheer daydreaming, which, to be fair, is a pretty accurate assessment of Reddit in general. And it's good that you got 2 months of free money, but try to collect your unearned pay without looking entitled. That said, it's nice to see Karen's funds will be depleted enough to hopefully keep her away from children. Since she seems to hate them so much, it almost feels like she opened this camp specifically to put them in danger. The weirdest thing about Karen's hatred for these kids is that she creates unnecessary problems for herself when she could have easily solved her initial problems. If she really doesn't want these kids owning instruments, then she should absolutely let lactose-intolerant kids join the camp. Give me a pint of Bluebell and I'll play taps loud enough to wake up every camper on the grounds. You've got to think about these things, Karen. That's the real reason your business went under. Clueless Creeper demands I ring him up after my shift when there's an empty line 3 feet away. This was about a year ago before I quit a big hardware store. The way the registers are set up is that the register sits on a counter, and there's no desk to separate me from the customer. Basically, it looks exactly like a self-checkout machine, with the only difference being the drawer filled with money underneath. And the only way customers can tell a register is closed down is that the light is turned off, since aisles don't really exist anymore. I just switched my light off when a bunch of customers came over. I started helping to get the line down while my coworker Sarah helped across from me. She started calling people over to her line and telling them I was closed so I could leave. I thanked her just as she got my last person in line, and I started gathering my stuff. Then an older guy walks up with a cart full of materials and says, "Good afternoon." I glanced over and smiled. "Hi, hun, did you have a question?" "I'm ready to check out," he said. I pointed to my coworker and said, "Sorry, I'm closed, but Sarah will check you out." Sarah waves to the guy and shouts a hello. The guy's smile disappears. "But you're right here." "Yes," I said, "but I'm leaving, and I just turned my light off. Her customer is almost finished paying right now, so you won't have to wait for more than a minute." Instead of leaving, the guy just continues to stand there and stare at me. I log out and take off my apron to drape over my arm so I can grab my other items. After 2 awkward minutes of this guy standing there staring at me while Sarah is trying to get him to come over, I finally say, "Sorry, sir, I'm logged out." "But I need to check out," he says. I point again to Sarah's now empty register and say, "She can get you, sir." "I want you to do it," he says. "I can't, sir. I have to head to class." At that point, I just walked away since I wasn't sure what else to tell the guy. As I was leaving, I saw the guy still standing at my empty register while Sarah now had a full line of people. Guy gave me a nasty glare as I left the building. He was still, mind you, waiting at the register. I was tempted to walk up to him and tell him that the hill he was ready to fall on wasn't worth it. But hey, to each their own, I suppose. Congratulations to the original poster for handling this man as professionally as possible. I honestly can't tell if he was being brain dead or just wanted to stare at a young girl. But either way, it would have been easy to call him out on one or the other. Women in customer service have some really sketchy stories that I've thankfully never had to put up with. If there are any women in the comments, feel free to share some below. I can only imagine how much worse it gets than this. Hungry Karen demands I put her on hold, so she can wait to complain about having been put on hold. While in college, I worked as the escalated transfer supervisor at a call center for a large Canadian pizza chain. One New Year's Eve, it was so busy in the call center that the customer service department started taking orders to ease the traffic, myself included. Suddenly, I get connected with Karen. Before I even have a chance to speak, She is already irate and rude. Why in the heck was I on hold for 30 minutes, eh? I apologize for the wait, I said, but it's New Year's Eve, madam, and everyone in the country is ordering pizza. That is unacceptable! I demand to speak to a customer service agent. I can transfer you if you'd like, I said, but I am in the customer service department and can talk to you about your complaint. Like heck you are, she yelled. Transfer me to customer service immediately. Okay, I said, but due to the busy day, you may be on hold for a while. I said now. So naturally, I added her to my customer service queue, which was 20 calls deep. After 30 minutes, Karen's turn comes up. Hi, I said. You've reached customer service. How may I help you? I was on hold for 30 minutes waiting, and... She trailed off as it hit her. Hold on, wasn't I just speaking to you? Yes, madam, she continued yelling. This is outrageous. I insist on speaking to the manager. Absolutely, I said. Please hold. And then I add her to my queue once again. Now keep in mind that the escalated transfer supervisor, me, is the final stage of customer service. This means I hold all the power. I continue to take orders for another 25 minutes or so, then pick up Karen's call. Hi there, I said. I believe you asked to speak to a manager. How can I help? Her tone became desperate. You're the manager too? Yes, madam, I said. You see, because it's so busy, I've been taking calls all day to ease the traffic and make things run a little quicker. Oh my goodness, Karen said. I've been waiting for over an hour. I did tell you, I said, that I could help when I took your initial call. Would you like me to take your order now? She had nothing left to say. It was so satisfying to let all the air out of her like that. Canadian justice is the best kind of justice. This original poster didn't do anything to get revenge. He just politely let Karen have exactly what she wanted, and it came back to bite her. The sheer existence of this Karen goes against everything I've been taught about Canada, but I'll just assume she's from Quebec. She was so mad about waiting to order her pizza, yet not mad enough that she wasn't willing to wait 2 more times just so somebody would listen to her complain. Sounds like she was hungry for attention more than anything. Then again, in a country where anchovies are the second most popular pizza topping, I'd probably want to wait an extra hour before eating my pizza too. Click one of the videos on screen right now.